All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Illini Audible Podcast. My name is Saeed Bravo. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the pod. I really appreciate it. So let's get right into it, guys. Obviously, I made my way back from West Lafayette, Indiana. Obviously, not too far of a drive from Champaign here, and I was gonna record the podcast. I was gonna do one of those janky setups over in the stands at West Lafayette because I was recording the post game video for ChampagneRoom.com. I wasn't able to get back into the press box. I was gonna record it somewhere in the stands, but I was like, it'd be too weird, man. So I just left, and now I'm here recording this podcast a couple hours removed from that. So let's get right into what we saw. Illinois taking down Purdue, bringing back the Cannon for a second year in a row. First time that's happened since 2001, 2002. And Illinois doing that once again, what a lot of people thought would be kind of a trap game, a quote-unquote trap game. It ended up being for the most part, none of that. And none of those kinds of concerns followed you throughout the course of a lot of this game, albeit there were things that you did. There were moments in this game. There were things that Illinois wasn't able to do in this game that made you feel a little bit iffy about whether or not Illinois could really pull it off. And they did. They did. And for the most part, at the end of the day, when it got to the fourth quarter, it ended up being very comfortable. And you felt like Illinois was in control. And at the end of the day, it was a good win. And that's exactly what happened. Illinois took down Purdue at their place, won it pretty comfortably in the end, 42-27. But a lot to kind of digest in one game, albeit there were a couple of things that definitely were not like, definitely was not like, I'm not sure, like made you feel great about what this team is doing against this caliber an opponent. Just because it's Purdue, because they're where they're at in their point of development with their new head coach. But overall, Illinois, good win for them. Obviously, I think the headliner is obviously the story of the game was Luke Altmyer and what he was able to do, the production that he had, the production that the passing attack had inside of this game. 390 yards for him, only one touchdown, but that doesn't really tell the story because a lot of those plays, a lot of those long balls, a lot of those, for the most part, it was it was a pretty good amount of yards at the catch. But then yards after catch was a whole nother thing as well, where you had Colin Dixon, you had Hank Beatty, you had even Ashton Hollins for a couple of these receptions take the ball way further down line, and they were able to execute. They were able to get a lot of things done in that way, albeit there were a couple moments where you thought, like, ask that Ashton Hollins reception, and maybe that could have been a touchdown. But for the most part, you were pleased for what you saw with the receivers, Ashton Hollins, Colin Dixon, and and uh, and Hank Beatty had themselves a day. You had Justin Boak as well have like a reception. Hudson Clement have one reception, but the main two guys, Colin Dixon and Hank Beatty, two guys that once again, the two names that we had heard a lot about in throughout the course of training camp continue to come to fruition, and the production that they've been having, especially Hank Beatty, who's been kind of that guy. You guys remember that question mark that everybody had, that the question mark that was raised in Las Vegas when Luke Altmyer, Xavier Scott, and I forget who the third Illini was, who ended up going to Las Vegas. The question that was raised was, well, who was it? Who was going to be the guy for Luke Altmyer? Who was going to be the receiver? Who was going to be the alpha to 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 rise up, to step up into the moment and be that guy? And for the most part, I think we've learned is that very clearly the guy is Colin Dix, or excuse me, the guy is Hank Beatty, who has put himself a pretty good season for him throughout the course of these first couple, what is it, 5 games, 6 games of the season. And you blink and you miss it. This football season's halfway done. And you wonder, you know, To me, it's very understandable how the connection can be there with Hank Beatty and Luke Altmyer. How that can kind of put you in a position where Illinois is really, really comfortable with what it is that the product that they're putting on the field. But Hank Beatty struck me as a guy who was maybe a bit undersized for the role that they were asking him to be in. And I do think he, especially, and you saw this at Indiana where he got batted around. Just the physical nature of the a team like that was able to really challenge him. And obviously that was a game that was bad for everyone. But it was something to me that give me some pause about that. But no, Hank Beatty for the most part, and you've seen it last week. You saw it this week again. You hope you can see the same thing at Ohio State because you hope that the same thing can continue to happen with those guys as well as you face one of the better teams in the country as well. But listen, well, one thing's for certain: Hank Beatty has been kind of a revelation on this team, and he has become that alpha guy that Luke Altmyer, that Hank Beatty, or excuse me, that Luke Altmyer, that Brett Bielema, that Barry Lunny might have been looking for throughout the course of the season. And you certainly hope that he can continue that level of production. Got to drink my water. But you know, another another guy who I think Colin Dixon's obviously been one of those guys as well. But excuse me. Uh, but now let's talk about the running game and what they were able to accomplish throughout the course of this game as well. Because the running game has also been something that we've had to pay attention for because, or we've had to pay attention to because of the nature of how this team is mostly reliant on their passing game, and then the running game has been, typically in football, you establish the run to set up the pass, but this feels kind of inverse throughout this part of the season, throughout just what Illinois football has been. Uh, Khalil Valentine had a career day with probably the most amount of snaps, definitely the most amount of time I've seen him play. Definitely the most amount of production. Not the most amount of production, but definitely the most amount of snaps, most amount of time I've seen him play in one singular game here tonight. And he delivered. I mean, this is just a different flavor kind of running back as we continue to harp on. This is just a different flavor running back that you have. And it's exciting to think that this guy is only a sophomore. I know he might be, on the shorter side, but he is shifty. He is fast, and he doesn't go down after contact and after the initial contact is what I mean. And that if you're an Illinois fan, if you that excites you because this could be a guy who continue being featured prominently. He doesn't say much. He doesn't want to say that he isn't. He's looking forward to those days where he is going to be the featured premier back. But you can't. I can't help but wonder what that will look like, and I can't help but get excited for him or what that will look like for him when he is that featured back. That 25-yard touchdown, man, great stuff. That's the second 25 plus yard touchdown he's had this season. He also had that touchdown against Duke where he kind of burst through the seam and just went and took it himself. That is exactly what you want to see from a guy who's still just a sophomore. Yeah, dude's gonna continue growing, probably continue to get stronger, and I don't know. I don't know. It's exciting to think about that, the prospect of all of that. Offensive line throughout the first quarter-ish, it felt like we were seeing a couple of those things, miscues, a couple of the things, maybe adjustment period with, and I will touch on the center position in a bit, but we felt like maybe we were creeping back to that territory of like what happened in Indiana. But now overall, I think the Illinois offensive line, they only allowed one sack, and for the most part, I think that they played really well and they were able to hold up, especially against in opposing territory, which the markings of a good offensive line, or maybe yeah, the markings of a good offensive line is if they can play well away from home. They can if they can play well amid the noise, and if they can play well at someone else's house. And I think for the most part, this Illinois offensive line answered the door, and they were able to do a lot of things that I think that maybe you could have questioned coming into this game, especially because obviously hostile territory. Josh Kreutz shows up on the injury report, questionable, doesn't end up playing this game. Thrust TJ McMillan into a position of a prominent position where he has to start at center. I thought he did pretty good. Like I think throughout the first quarter, there was definitely a moments where you thought, okay, like it looks like pressure's coming down the middle, and it might be a case where Purdue is definitely taking advantage of that center position and trying to take advantage of what it is that they had in terms of personnel and exploiting that. But I thought TJ McMillan did pretty well, and he didn't let up for the most part. So that I think that was encouraging to see the guy who's literally been Luke said it after the game. He's literally like shadowing Josh Kreutz throughout the past 3 seasons. I mean, you have that. I mean, they say that when you are shadowing, when you are a backup to a pretty good center or to a pretty good offensive line or whatever position it may be, and then suddenly you're thrust into that position the following year. Typically, it is year to year, and not pending injury, which tonight it was injury. But they say that, you know, learning from behind, that there's a lot of benefit to that, and that it can put you in a good position. What felt like TJ McMillan was ready for it, and I thought he did pretty well. More water. All right. Defensively is a little different. Different story. Turnovers continue to be a common theme for this team, for this defensive unit. I mean, you had that 5, or it was 4 on defense, and 5. The 5th one was on special teams against Duke. But you have multiple turnover games for like the third time this season, I believe. And I have to go back and check, but I know that against Duke, I know that against USC, and I know that against Purdue, they had multiple turnovers, 2 forced fumbles tonight. And this time, Illinois, for the most part, took advantage, or they did take advantage of those turnovers. There were a couple turnovers against USC where they weren't able to convert. But literally the first fumble that they get, the next play is a huge Hank Beatty reception that puts them in the red zone. And that's where you think, okay, they answered the bell. I think it was a touchdown. It wasn't it was literally a touchdown. It was a 61-yard touchdown. And that's exactly what you want to see Illinois' offense respond once you get a fumble. But the point is that this Illinois defense continues to be able to take advantage of their opponent's mistakes, and I think that's encouraging to see. Where it's not encouraging is the explosive plays and the plays that they do let off. There were a couple moments inside of this game where you did feel like Purdue was continuing to be inside of, be within, and they were lingering in the game. They were still in the game. And it's moments like that where it raises it gives you pause. What's gonna happen when you face a team like Indiana again? When you face a team like Ohio State next week? When you go to Washington and face a really good team at home? You hope that this doesn't continue to translate into what happened in Indiana. Turnovers are great to see, but there were moments in this game, there were plays inside of this game where you felt like the big play was happening. And I think you don't want to continue seeing that. And so you wonder what kind of issues or know what kind of changes might be made defensively. Or yeah, I know the personnel isn't ideal. You're missing Xavier Scott, and that's important to note as well. And you did put in, you have uh more guys in there who have less experience, and it might be a growing pains. But there was, bottom line, I think, good amount of times where you felt like Illinois should be able to do much better defensively, and unfortunately, for it wasn't the case uh, tonight. There were definitely times where they weren't able to do that. There were plenty of bright spots, though. I do think Torrey Cox continues to impress me. Just the size of the guy and the what he's able to do defensively, what he's able to the total tackles. Just the dude is. It feels like he's everywhere in the field, and like this guy is just everywhere. And so he continues to impress me. The guy who's been continuing to make really good plays ever since he came back from injury, Jaheim Clark. 7 total tackles, a tackle for loss. I mean, this guy has been everywhere ever since. You talk about the impact of a guy who, the kind of impact the guy can have when he comes to back from injury, and that's exactly what you mean, man. Like it is excellent to have a guy that you can count on at the cornerback position, and he's largely been that. And you hope to that he can stay healthy. I mean, he seems like a guy who doesn't really get injured, but I thought he played really well. Obviously, Gabe Atkins, and not enough can be said about just the impact that he's had. Half a sack, half a tackle for loss, 4 total tackles. But a guy who continues to impress, and I think continues to make that impact. You know who had a really interesting time? Jojo Hayden, who made that vicious stuff at the one. I know the next play they scored, Purdue scored, but I mean, just see the guy just that is like an NFL that is an NFL type of play. And you saw that, and I think that gives you a lot of I think that is like a pump up factor for any defense. And so you see then you think plenty well about the guy and all of that. And so that's one of the things that those are kind of what I had in terms of defensively. But overall, you feel good about this team. I think uh I'm trying to look at my notes. I think I had one more thing. Uh, Purdue did have a lot of drops, which is I think important part of the story is that there were a lot of opportunities that Purdue did not take advantage of, and so you hope that if Illinois plays a game like this again, that it isn't against uh, Ohio State, because if they play like this against Ohio State, they're not going to win that game. Purdue they won this game because of this particular program, this particular team. But you play like this at home against Ohio State defensively, then you got to say goodbye to, I think, any playoff chances. I mean, not maybe not any, just because of what's been happening. I mean, we just saw Penn State lose to UCLA in incredible fashion. So, I mean, really anything can happen, but I don't think you can afford 2 more losses in the season. You're going to have a pretty identical season to what you had last year, which is not a bad thing. Like, that is not a bad thing. But Brett Bielema did talk last year a lot about the you know getting making that the expectation. He is making that the expectation, but it's about what's going to happen next. How do you continue building on that? And I think, Illinois needs to continue winning these kinds of games. They need to make a state. They have to have a statement game. I know they won that USC game that is probably that is their prized possession so far this season. But that alone is not going to get you to the college football playoff. Um, that alone might not even get you back to the Citrus Bowl, which I don't know if that's exactly the standard that they want to get to again or meet that. But, you want to take the next step. There was a lot of expectation coming into the season. You should not forget that there was a lot of hype coming into the season. And so you look at that schedule, man, and I mean, anything can happen. Ohio State coming to town. That's exciting. Big noon kickoff coming back again. Exciting. Oh, you hope you can replicate a little bit of that magic and you can put it into that game, you put the whole college football landscape on notice if that happens. But bottom line, it's gonna be it is a tough ask. Um, and so you hope that they can put up a really good battle. We'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting. We'll see. But for now, really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Just a couple thoughts here about this game. So subscribe, rate, review, please. It helps a lot. Uh, please enjoy. Please continue consuming the content. And yeah, subscribe, rate, review. All right. I'll see you guys. Peace.